Every Wednesday, William Henry's Revelations bring you a powerful half hour of information at the cutting edge of reality. Information that you cannot find anywhere else in the world. And now, here's William.
Welcome, everyone. My February 6th Revelations featured a commentary about Iran's belief in Judgment Day as the motivating force behind its actions. I received a few thoughtful notes from listeners who enjoyed the interview and a few who didn't. The latter are over talk about Judgment Day scenarios. Nothing happened with 2012, and no one was held accountable. And now they say, we need to close up shop and move on from this subject. Part of me agrees, especially about the accountability part. We need to keep score if people are making wacky predictions. But then there's always something that happens. And indeed, something happened that stirred the soup about Judgment Day and tells me the business of Judgment Day isn't going away anytime soon. What happened was the Pope resigned, like lightning, out of the blue on February 11th. Today, February 27th, is his last day as Pope, and we certainly wish him the best. The Pope's sudden and shocking resignation sent millions flocking to the 12th century last Pope prophecy of St. Malachi. In his prophecy dated 1139, Malachi prophesied that there would be 112 more popes before Judgment Day. Benedict is the 111th pope. The final pope, called Petrus Romanus, or Peter the Roman, could be the return of St. Peter as the first and the last to rule the church, at least according to Roman theology. Gnostics say that James, the brother of Jesus, was the first leader of the Jerusalem church that was formed by the family of Jesus. As I write in my blog, End of Divine Darkness, at the end of the last pope's reign, according to this prophecy, the dreadful judge will judge the people. He's called dreadful because he brings the end of the church, among other reasons. So it's 0 dark 30 time as the Vatican goes on an extraordinary manhunt for the next pope. Will he be the last? Will Judge Jesus return at the end of the last pope's reign? Maybe in a matter of years, if not sooner. Today's guest, Nanette Christ, has spoken extensively at the ARE and elsewhere about the last pope and how this prophecy is connected to Edgar Cayce's prophecy, and Nostradamus' quatrain about the appearance of a great star that some believe could be Comet ISON, due in late November, and how it could herald the appearance of Judge Jesus. Nanette is world famous as the artist of one of the most mystical and lifelike paintings of Jesus ever known. It's been validated by many visionaries, and most recently she is the executive producer of the film White Buffalo. She spent the past year interviewing Native American elders on their prophecy for this time. Conversation with her makes it clear that Nanette's decades of experience in the alternative science and metaphysical community have put her way beyond the ordinary in terms of knowledge and understanding of our times. And we welcome Nanette as a true way shower. We welcome her to Revelations. Welcome, Nanette.
Thank you, William.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I have so much to talk about with you, Nanette, but I just thought I'd start with just a brief recollection of how we met, because I think it's such a great story. Would that be all right with you?
Wonderful.
So Claire and I were in East Tennessee. I was giving a presentation, and we were exhibiting at this conference over there, and we had our table set up with my books and DVDs, as well as Claire's Sacred Reflections paintings of sacred art from ancient Egypt and some images of Jesus even and others. And this beautiful woman comes up to the table and remarks about how lovely Claire's paintings were and how some of the paintings of Jesus were really pretty lifelike. And Claire's response was, well, yeah, they are, but they're nothing like my favorite painting of Jesus, she said. And that was the person standing there, and she said, well, I happen to be a painter as well, and so I'd be interested in that painting. And Claire goes and gets this book cover that has this painting of Jesus on it, and Nanette says, that's my painting. And that starts a friendship. And what's so incredible about that, Nanette, as I'm sure Claire told you, is that she had carried your painting almost all around the world with her. In fact, we met in Egypt several years ago. Claire brought the painting with her, and she actually lost it in her hotel room and when she switched rooms, and one of the Egyptian maids found the painting and returned it to Claire, and every day after that, while she was at the hotel, these maids would bring her different pictures of Jesus because they were sharing their although they were Muslim, they were sharing their belief and sharing their devotion to the divine realm. So what a story.
It is, and I'm so delighted to get to know you and Claire. It's been a very precious treasure for me in the exchanges that we've had. And we're looking forward to going to France with you in the near future to see the sacred sites of the Magdalene.
Yes, and thank you for joining that tour. Now, let's get down to business here, Nanette, because this is some really serious stuff we're talking about. Now, ARE is one of the preeminent organizations, spiritual organizations in America. You've been deeply involved for years. Let's first talk about your connections with the ARE, and then we'll get into our discussion about the connections between the Edgar Cayce prophecies, the prophecy of St. Malachi, and Nostradamus. So, your connection to ARE.
Well, many years ago, when I was only about 18, my brother told me about Edgar Cayce and learning to meditate, and I immediately had an out-of-body experience and had to find out more about it. So I went to the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, and before that I read all the Cayce books that I could find that were then published. Later on, after the picture of Jesus was painted and I had an apparition of him, the ARE, the Heritage Stores, and other groups around the world asked for that picture because their visionaries had seen him the same way as I had seen him when he appeared at Easter time and did the painting. So after that, I was speaking at the ARE on not only the apparition of Jesus and Mother Mary and Archangel Michael and others that I had painted, but also communication with them. And beyond that, speaking about prophecies, comparing both the Edgar Cayce prophecies with Jean Dixon, Nostradamus, Malachi, and others. So I spoke other topics on various occasions there and also at Global Sciences and various metaphysical groups. So in doing so, I was also interestingly involved with some members of the leaders of the Catholic Church and also some members of the Freemasons, and I understand there is also a branch of Masonry that the Catholics approve of, the accepted Masons. So I did spiritual consultations for many of them and also did portraits for them as well. In doing so, I became even more involved with prophecy, which my father had told me when I was 10 years old, that the book of Revelations would happen in my lifetime if I could understand that. And he had seen the prophecies concerning the Great Pyramid and the prophecy timeline in the Great Pyramid prior to World War II, and he said it happened exactly on schedule according to that, familiarized me with Nostradamus, and I started studying at age 10 about those things. And it did take decades before I even began to understand what the book of Revelations is all about, because you can use it in a literal translation as something that pertains to the entire world. You can use it as an archetypal psychological study, or you can look at it as an internal initiation that each person goes through as they come to their spiritual perfection with God.
And we can probably extrapolate that to a global level, can't we, Nanette? It's also not only individual, but it's a collective initiation.
It's a collective initiation, and that's what we're going through now, and that's part of what we're here to talk about today in terms of Peter the Roman, who is prophesied to be the last pope. I think the best thing to do would be to discuss exactly what was written by Malachi. Malachi, as some people know, was a Irish archbishop and a saint. We're not referring to the Old Testament prophet Malachi. It's Malachi. So he was visiting in Rome, I believe it was, when he went into a trance and started prophesying in an ecstatic, altered state. And someone had the wisdom to record exactly what was being said. And he prophesied about all the popes from then forward in terms of what their mission or logo or symbol would be. And he's been accurate in, as far as anybody can tell, most all of them. And the last pope is the one who is currently resigning before the very last one that he mentions. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read exactly what the prophecy says.
Yes, please.
In the English translation, this is the best translation I could come up with. I took 3 years of Latin, and parts of it could be debatable, but we can discuss that too.
Okay.
In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will sit Petrus Romanus, which is Peter the Roman, who will pasture his sheep in many tribulations. And when these things are finished, the city of the 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people, the end. And as we know, the city of the 7 hills is Rome.
And Christians believe that Judge Dredd, or the dreadful judge, is Jesus, who is judge over all the earth, and at Judgment Day will judge everyone, or Christians anyway.
Right, and the exact word is in Latin, tremendous. So we have to look at this, I think, in a similar way to when the Nostradamus prophecy came about concerning the Lord of Terror or the Lord of Judgment, it was sometimes translated.
The King of Terror, right, the
Terror.
Famous 1999 quatrain.
Right, that also meant awesome. Terror also meant awesome, and I think you covered that in one of your books.
I did. That was the expression that Jacob used when after he scaled the ladder to heaven, he woke from a dream and said, "Terrible is this place." And what he meant is, awesome, power, incredible is this place. This is none other than the gate to God, and this is the gate to heaven. So actually the word terrible, dreadful, have the same meaning, and it means awesome. And the very first reference to that word, the use of that word, is in reference to the stairway to heaven, the gate to God. Incredible.
Yeah, so you could look at this particular word in this prophecy as being Lord of Judgment, or causing tremors, or tremendous. And I think it depends upon the individual how they're going to receive that.
Exactly. Which level, where are you at on the spiral of evolution on this, or the spiral of initiation? If you're in fear, you're going to look at this and go, I don't believe Jesus can be the King of Terror. Well, you have to recognize or hit the books and find out what the meaning of that word originally meant in this context. And it means he's the king of awesomeness and power.
Exactly. So if people understand this, those who are leading a virtuous, spiritual, kind life have absolutely nothing to fear, and they're going to think it's awesome. And those who are not may think it's terrible or be in fear. They are ever given every opportunity throughout history to repent. You know, P.M.H. Atwater, who wrote the book and a whole collection of thousands of people who had near-death experiences, and some of them went through their life's review. In most cases, they felt so embraced by the love of God that they felt the only judgment in their life's review was coming from themselves, or what Edgar Casey will call their ideal. In other words, if your ideal is the standard of Jesus, then you would judge your own actions by the standard of Jesus' life. And in the West in particular, they looked at themselves as an individual in their life's review and looked at themselves accordingly. So if you're a Buddhist, you would look at it from a Buddhist perspective. Or if you have very low standards of moral conduct or spirituality, then you might not judge yourself so harshly. On the other hand, people in the Far East were found to not judge themselves individually, but only collectively, because they see themselves as a part of the whole. They didn't go through a life review in the near-death studies that have been done. So this is an interesting perspective on what we have to understand in all prophecy that's coming now in this time period and has come in the past. And you and I had discussed earlier off the air that so much of what has happened already has been averted because, as Edgar Casey has said, as the prophets have warned, a prophecy where there's tremendous suffering and tribulation is a failed prophecy, because if the people had listened to the prophets, they would have already gone into prayer, meditation, repented, changed their ways, and lived in a kind, loving, and serving way. And so if enough people do that, if enough people even meditate and pray, any prophecy can be changed. Any earth changes can be changed. And so that the land is healed, the people are healed, the unified consciousness comes about.
And I think that's what you're talking about there, Nanette, is the most important point, perhaps, of this prophecy is that it's really about cleaning up our act as individuals. Maybe a softer term would be raising our vibration, behaving in more of a righteous manner, because the promise of all this is that if enough people behave in a righteous manner, then humankind will manifest something that the Jews called the pillar of righteousness, in which in the Bible is called the Son of Man. And the Son of Man appears to be some kind of a cosmic conduit. It's another name, actually, for the stairway to heaven. And all of the prophecies of the return of the dreadful judge, the awesome, powerful judge, connect him with this awesomely powerful ladder, tower, pillar, or stairway to heaven, where people who have developed their consciousness will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven, as the prophecy says, with great power and great glory. And this is something that I'm wondering if how many people really have a handle on of the possibility that what we're talking about here is a manifestation of a Christ being through this pillar of light, perhaps, that is seen on a global basis. How do you react to something like that, Nanette?
Well, as many people know, Mother Mary, almost as the forerunner to Jesus, has been appearing at Fatima, Lourdes, Zaytun, and most recently in South Africa in a miraculous way. I posted a video of her appearing in a brilliant column of light that then burst into a sunburst with her in the center before the people that were in the street screaming because they were so startled by it. And my understanding is, and this goes into some science here, that there is the white light of God is a vertical column of white light. And this light supersedes all other forms of energy in this world, in this physical dimension. Most forms of energy, from our perspective, are on a horizontal level. The white light of God, the pillar of light, the scalar waves, are in a vertical column of light, and that's why we as stand-up beings are able to receive this light through our crown and into our heart and down into our being more completely than other creatures. Now, when a person goes into a completely peaceful, loving, still, no distractions, nonverbal state of mind, which they can do through deep meditation and prayer, they then are able to let go of all reactionary behavior, all conceptions, all feelings that have anything to do with anything other than love, peace, and beauty, and they open their hearts to this white light, and it pours into them. And that's why all the saints, the sages, Jesus, have been pictured with rainbow or white-colored halos around them. And the vertical column of white light, or the pillar of light that's spoken about in Exodus as coming over the Ark of the Covenant, and also appearing many other times whenever there was an appearance of an angel, being a thunderclap and a flash of something like lightning. Lightning is the degradation of the white light as it comes down into the physical dimensions and begins to dissipate or die. The original white light, the universal prime force, is something that I first experienced when I was 21, when I had an illumination experience with God, being in the state of ecstasy and seeing God as the great central sun of our being, which everyone has and a connection to and can have that experience. And this is the stargate, or the stairway to God or to heaven, because God has this divine spark, this divine microcosm, exact copy of his spiritual being as the great central sun within us, accessible to us. For some people, they say in the I Am teachings that it hovers right over your head. And once you make yourself open, just as the Ark of the Covenant makes this attunement and the mercy seat comes in, then the white light, the Holy Spirit, the I Am that I Am, comes into us and can dwell there. Now,
and Jesus states this explicitly in the book of John, saying, I tell you the truth, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Nanette, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, let's next connect the Malachi prophecy with Nostradamus' famous quatrain about the great star that will burn for 7 days when the great Pope changes his territory, and some of the other things that go along with that quatrain. This is Revelations. We'll be right back.
An Unknown Country subscription opens a door into a world of mystery and information. Over 200 special interviews where our guests open the doors of their minds to our subscribers. A Dreamland archive going back to 2004. Plus Whitley's Room, where you will find his talks on The Key and The Path, his original communion hypnosis sessions, audio versions of many of his books, the inspiring talks on the Bible as you have never heard it discussed before, and above all, his beautiful, inspiring meditations. More special material for subscribers every week. $12.95 gets you 3 months of wonder. Plus you can subscribe online or by mail.
This is Whitley Strieber. This week for Unknown Country subscribers, something special. It's special certainly in my life. I am reading the short story Pain. This story is what I wrote immediately during and after I had my close encounter experience in 1985. I was actually working on it when the experience happened, and the story, I believe, tells some extraordinary secrets, things that have remained secret to this day, about what, in my deepest unconscious mind, I understood was going on after I had the experience, but before I had any conscious memory of it. Following the reading of the story, there is an analysis. I will be analyzing the story and telling exactly what I think it reveals. It has taken me 30 years to get from that story to the point where I think I can accurately say what its inner meaning is. So if you're not a subscriber to UnknownCountry.com, maybe you ought to think about doing that. This is unique in the world.
This is Revelations. We are continuing with Nanette Christ. You can visit Nanette's website, which is christchurch.org. That's CRIST church.org. Nanette, let's now move on to connect the last Pope prophecy to this incredible quatrain from Nostradamus that reads, "The great star for 7 days will burn. A cloud will make 2 suns appear. The big mastiff will howl all night when a great Pope changes his territory." What's Nostradamus referring to there, do you think?
I think he's referring to the same thing that's being prophesied by Malachi and also Gene Dixon, where he's referring to the possibility, and we won't say that it's absolutely going to happen because, as we said, it can be changed, the possibility that the Pope will change his location, and Malachi is saying because of persecution of the church. Gene Dixon and Nostradamus and others are referring also to a ongoing recreation of the conflict between Arabs and Christians and Jews. And I certainly don't want to say anything to fan the flames of that happening, but we need to recognize that the prophecies stand as they are, and we have the option to avert these things by changing history. And there are those master souls on the earth, certainly, who are intervening with the leaders of the world at this time to try to make that happen, and they need our prayer assistance in doing so. But earlier on, Nostradamus says, "He will bring to life the king of the Mongols before and after war reigns. This king enters Europe wearing a blue turban. He shall cause the infernal gods of Hannibal to live again. He will be the terror of mankind, never more horror." He goes on to further to talk about the decline of moral standards and their replacement with a more amenable set of moral values. The Moorish law will be seen to fall, followed by another that is more pleasing, and so on. And then when he talks about the king of terror, he says, "He will stay afar away through his enemies. They will arrive to subdue it afterwards. The new city contemplates a condemnation before and after war to reign by good fortune when the buried come out of their graves," which sounds very much like the prophecies of the time of Jesus as well. Mm-hmm. This whole concept is that the Pope will have to leave Rome because of war and Rome being destroyed. If the cardinals choose someone whose name is Peter or symbolizes Peter, then we will know that they are very conscious of this. We will know that this is a stage set to happen. We'd like to believe that he wants to leave because he finds a better place, but no one is going to leave Vatican City voluntarily to put their headquarters elsewhere. So should that prophecy happen, that's because he's forced to do so. He's also prophesied to be the last pope. One would like to believe that that is because there is an ultimate unification of the world religions based on spirituality, centered upon God, the I am that I am, the God, the creator of all of us. But we cannot say absolutely that that is what's going to happen initially. If the intermediaries that are working between the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians are able to make them realize that they're all expecting the same Messiah, Mahdi, incarnation of Krishna, or the Lord of the Second Advent, that it may be the same person or same holy couple, then we don't have to have this kind of conflict.
And that gets me excited, Nanette, because a lot of interpreters want to say the great star that for 7 days will burn is maybe a comet or a star-going supernova. Well, enter Comet ISON, which, of course, the brain reads as Scion, which is now being called the Comet of the Century. It's expected to arrive in late November, cause a spectacular display. That is, if it makes it past the sun or makes it through the sun's atmosphere. If it does, its brightness will outshine the moon, scientists claim. And in the weeks before 2013, ISON will be visible to the naked eye, even in broad daylight. It's going to be absolutely outrageous, and it could even appear, as Nostradamus described it, as a second sun, because as it goes by the sun, according to scientists, it could even be visible near the sun in broad daylight again for a short time. So you get all these people that are saying, well, okay, here comes this comet that's bringing all this great change. But as I was looking at that, and I've over the years have been researching Nostradamus off and on, beginning with the King of Terror prophecy. Had a chance to confer with John Hogue about that back in around 1998 or so, and he was kind of, I think, intrigued by the connection that in the Holy Grail tradition, Jesus is referred to as the King of Terror because of the incredible power and awesomeness of his vibration, of his knowledge of the light that accompanies him. And it gave me cause to wonder is, what if Nostradamus' quatrain is a prophecy that can be interpreted in the Gnostic context, where the great star is in fact the great star man or the star woman of the Gnostic Gospels, perhaps a divine couple as you're talking about, who will manifest and burn brightly, giving off illumination, wisdom, maybe literal physical light as an apparition does, for 7 days. What about that?
That would be the most wonderful thing that could possibly happen. And, in the Old Testament, there were prophecies about the Lord coming in the cloud and judgment and all of that. And then when Jesus came, born as a man, in a divine man, albeit, and no one seemed to recognize him except a few people. The reason was they were expecting a certain thing, and they wanted him to be sitting on the throne of David. They wanted to be all-powerful and glorified, and that isn't how he came initially, although had they accepted him, that could have been the case. And I think the people who were spiritually open and clairvoyant automatically saw that he was the Christ. Anyone who was intuitive that came within range of his presence would understand that. But most of the population did not. Now, because we're going through what we would call a cosmic upgrade and being bombarded by far more energy from the sun and from the galactic center than ever before, it may be that all of the people, or most of them on the planet, will be able to see the auras, and they'll see who is the spiritual leaders and the pure souls, the spiritually perfected souls that are on the earth at this time as well.
Revelation says that will be the case, and
yeah.
I blogged about this in my recent blog, End of Divine Darkness, which is on WilliamHenry.net. And to me, the appearance of the star man or star woman scenario, it explains everything in Nostradamus' quatrain. It explains the cloud. and the two suns that appear. The cloud, in my view, is the bright cloud manifested by Jesus during what's called his greatest miracle, the Transfiguration. During this event, he transfigured or morphed into a star man and back again. And Christian art portrays the transfigured Jesus with a star-like body and a circular portal behind him that's referred to as a cloud in the Bible. This is his ascension and return vehicle, the cosmic tube, the tube of light, the pillar of righteousness, the Son of Man. These are all names for this cloud of as it's called, or tube of light. The two sons that emerge from the cloud or accompany the cloud are, to me, Moses and Elijah, the two sons of Sion who appeared beside Jesus during his transfiguration. They're also the two witnesses of Revelation. They're the two witnesses who provide the oil for the lamps, or the spiritual vibration that awakens our consciousness. They're the agents of the ultimate disclosure. And then as the quatrain finishes, it says their appearance will cause the big mastiff to howl all night. To me, that's the black dog, the hound of hell, who will howl all night, because with the appearance of Judge Jesus and the two sons, the secret of overcoming death and achieving eternal life will be revealed to all. And then the great pontiff will change his country. He will no longer be, his assistance or his input will no longer be required, and then the celebration will be immense.
Yes. Another person who referred to this cometary body that you're talking about, well, Jean Dixon did, but she had forecast that it would strike the earth in the 80s, and of course everybody prayed, and that did not happen because that aura of protection went up. But Mother Shipton also says, and I quote, and she was another prophetess from Norfolk, England, who's been quite accurate. She says, a fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for the 6 heralds in this prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights, man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore, and flooding waters rushing in will flood the land with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy sand and snarls about his fellow man. And she goes on from there, but you get the idea. They're talking about not only appearance of Jesus, but also the appearance of a comet or a heavenly body as a sign of the second coming and the people going through the cleansing and the realization that we are all one spiritual family.
And speaking of signs, Nanette, most recently you've been the executive producer of the film White Buffalo, where you spent the past year interviewing Native American elders on their prophecy for this time. Tell us about that.
Well, we went to most of the major tribes, particularly in the Southwest, who had prophecy traditions. We talked to the prophecy carriers, the fire bearers, the wisdom keepers, as you would call them, that I encouraged to be wisdom sharers, the clan mothers, and so on. And we talked to 2 of the 13 grandmothers as well and interviewed them. That movie will be coming out probably this summer or later this year. It is called White Buffalo, An American Prophecy, and you can go online to see more about it for your listeners. In the interviews, we heard everything from what had happened in past ages when there was a new root race coming in, or major earth changes, or when the magnetic field went down. We talked to a Toltec elder just a short time before he died, and they talked about the harnessing of the white light, the scalar wave technology that was used in ancient times, and that's why there's pyramids all over the world, because that was the instrument of not only enlightenment and healing, but also their mode of what we now use electricity for. And when they talked about the changes, we heard everything from it's going to be very mild and gradual, which Edgar Casey said that the earth changes would be gradual in this time period, to they felt that there had to be a cleansing before people would turn to God voluntarily in mass. And when you have a major crisis in the world, then there's a kind of a collective mindset that sets in, particularly if it's a worldwide crisis. People have to recognize all at once together that this is something that we have to work together to resolve.
We need like a cosmic 9/11, not the false flag 9/11, but a cosmic 9/11.
Well, exactly. And even if it isn't something that's going to cause terrible suffering, they have to feel that it's something that can only become worked through together to make what's called a mind link and a heart link. And so far, unfortunately, the things that are threatening the most, which is the economic collapse on a global scale, not only America but throughout the world, where there's some work towards resolving that, but not enough that the power brokers have let go of their, call it selfish concerns or individual ideas on this, or the environment, or any of the other things that we're facing right now collectively to have resolved them. So it appears to me that there will have to be something more that people will need to get a wake-up call. And God is so compassionate and so loving of us, far more than any earthly parent is. I believe that God has given us, in our lifetime, a lot more time than we were forecasted to have through the prophecies to work these things out, at least another 40 years. And I believe we have at least until the year 2020. But we're really on the fast track now where it's going to get a lot more intense.
Yeah, and that's kind of the underlying point of my book, The Judgment Day Device, as well. And I think you kind of have maybe a shared sense, Nanette, that there's maybe a scalar technology, a free energy technology out there that is the game changer, that will be the great leveler, just as the cell phone has been the great leveler. And perhaps people couldn't even conceive of that 50 years ago, but now there seems to be some technologies that are on the horizon that might fulfill this game-changing role. Talk about the promise of free energy technology and how people can learn more about that.
Well, there's a number of things that I personally, over the last 20, 30 years, have encountered, and scientists and inventors who have invented reproducible free energy technologies. In the case of Dr. George Merkel, he was the first to develop cold fusion successfully in 1965. He was a very close friend. Our government classified it. He went on Johnny Carson's show to try to get it declassified. He showed me some of the things that he had developed from that free energy. Once you have free energy, cold fusion, you can then open up all the other things that the power brokers are afraid of, which includes levitation. Tesla had already done it. Nikola Tesla had already done it, and where we would have... And by the way, Edgar Casey gave Tesla readings to help him to do that and to develop free energy, and that was when J.P. Morgan and the others shut him down because they knew they couldn't charge for it or exploit it. Everyone would have limitless energy. They'd have levitation devices, and by the way, in Dr. Merkel's case, that led to other discoveries that cured most diseases, for which he was ultimately killed. They threatened his family. And in the case of some other scientists that I have known, they've also developed other types of free energy devices and said, keep this available should the grid go down. In other words, should we have a magnetic field reverser or a big solar flare, there are free energy things that are very inexpensive. And you can go online and look up Nikola Tesla and follow through and have your own alternative energy sources for your home. And it's beyond solar, it's beyond wind. It connects to the electromagnetic fields and the scalar waves of the planet and the stars. So these things are already invented. It's just that they've been not made available because, I don't want to say the world isn't ready for it yet, but those that control most of the media and those that are concerned about bankrupting the pharmaceutical or the energy companies are not allowing it out. And our government,
I call this, I call it the Judgment Day device, but now as you're talking, I'm thinking maybe we should just call it the King of Terror, because that will be the net result. It will destroy the present world order and introduce a new world order, and that will be incredibly terrifying for those who seek to enslave and manipulate and keep humankind at the level of slaves and sex objects.
Exactly, and what we have to do is we have to be prepared so that people during that time of transition have a life of prayer, a good connection to staying calm and staying centered and knowing that there is nothing to fear because we are eternal beings, but also that they have the alternate energy, whatever form that works for them, whether it's wind or solar or the Tesla-type machines that are available, and make their own. They have an alternative form of food, whether they're storing up, dried foods, or whether they have aquaponics, where it's a self-sustaining system of the fish feeding the plants feeding the fish. Just something so that they can grow whatever is needed in a crisis. we also got a big hydro-stackers garden ourselves, which is all organic, but if there's ever a crisis, we'll have enough food to feed the entire neighborhood, 65,000 pounds of fruits and vegetables on this 8 by 10 by 13 foot tall unit of hydroponic gardening that anybody can do in their yard, or if they don't have a yard, they can at least grow enough for their own family. So I'm recommending that everybody have a water purifier that's inexpensive, even if it's just the straw to purify the water. You have alternatives for food, water, whatever. And should we see the 3 days of darkness, the 3 days of light, which we didn't discuss, but are prophesied, or any other phenomenal things in the heavens, stay indoors, pray, meditate, fast if necessary, but have your water for your family and your food and your sacred space together. This is what's most important for going through this time period, so that people don't panic and they don't harm one another.
Very good advice. And Nanette, we've come to the end of our time for today, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your perspective on this. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm available anytime you want to talk about these and other metaphysical subjects.
So thank you, Nanette. And tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
They can get in touch through the website Christ Church, that's C-R-I-S-T, it's spelled like Christ without the H, christchurch.org, and they can see more of the spiritual art on there and find out more about what we're doing. We'll be downloading a video soon about my life and work in metaphysics, and we're also getting blogs on about the White Buffalo movie and when it will be coming out, so you can hear for yourselves the Native Americans and what they had to say.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Nanette. It's been a pleasure, and we'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you, William Henry. God bless.
God bless you, too. This has been Revelations. Thank you, everybody, for listening. See you next time.
Attending a William Henry presentation is unforgettable. Keep up with his schedule at williamhenry.net. You've been listening to William Henry's Revelations on Dreamland Radio. Next Wednesday, another cutting-edge revelation from William Henry.